Welcome to Belkin's Growth Podcast, hosted by Michael Maximoff, co-founder and managing partner at Belkin's. Today's guest is Marina Golemis, Senior Director of Client Acquisitions at ShipBob. ShipBob is a Chicago-based technology company that offers an end-to-end fulfillment solution for e-commerce businesses. Marina has joined Michael for this episode to discuss sales career opportunities, the specifics of selling in e-commerce, the difference between SMB and enterprise sales. Having spent more than 10 years in sales and selling into multiple industries, Marina has shared her unique experience and life lessons. Enjoy listening, and don't forget to subscribe for more episodes.
My marketing hat, Dmitry, who actually reached out to you initially and set up this call for us, he found your name in the list of top 100 salespeople to talk to or worth following to. How did you get, or how you end up in the list? Are you known for a specific project, or there was like a project that you worked on and then it was like it was a huge success? And after that, what was that kind of transition moment for you where more people start reaching out to you, getting you, inviting for the shows and getting your feedback on certain sales related or marketing related topics?
Yeah, it wasn't any one project or any one situation. I think I have an interesting background, interesting experience. So, I spent out of college, I worked in transportation, eco logistics, and Open Mile. And then I went over to Trunk Club, which was obviously a pretty well-known company. And then now being at ShipBob, ShipBob's a very fast growth company. So I think a little bit was luck. Like I bounced around industries, but I ended up at some pretty notable companies. And so that will get folks' attention. And I moved from being an individual contributor to management, to director, to senior director role within that time. And so I think people were just interested in how someone goes from trucking to fashion, then back to transportation. So that garnered a little bit of attention.
You mentioned that you've been in both in more transactional sales and selling to enterprise as well. So you started off by selling to enterprise and then you went into more transactional, or it was vice versa?
It was a little bit vice versa. So Eco Logistics sells transportation services like freight transportation, but their bread and butter is LTL, which is like 1 or 2 pallets at a time versus an entire truckload. So it could be, you could get lucky and call someone and they could say, actually, I have 2 pallets sitting on my dock right now. Can you send a truck today? So it was definitely a fast-paced, very fast-moving type of sale. Of course, we were always looking for the customers that would sign a contract and give us all of their business. But I was young and I like the quick hits and quick wins. So I kind of focused on that. So that was a lot more transactional. And so I didn't really start enterprise sales until quite a bit later in my career.
So do you think that during the start of the career for a sales rep, you should go through this transition period where you start off with more kind of transactional sales as a sales rep, spending a few more years getting those fast wins, getting that first fresh blood, and then moving on to enterprise? Or people can actually start off working with enterprise sales from the very beginning without having that on-site experience working with more kind of either direct to customer or just more kind of fast speed sales? Which one is that for?
I mean, everyone does sales is a grind, right? And so the transactional sale is that grind, that hustle, that like you really cut your teeth in that very fast pace. You get rejected a lot, but you also feel the quick wins. And I think that's a great place to start because it gives you kind of a snapshot of what the long term will look like. Enterprise sales, you can work on a deal for 6 months and have it fall through. And if you start there, that could really, I feel like it could really hurt someone's confidence, right? Coming out of college and just not seeing those quick wins. So I think that's why a lot of folks start in, business development positions because it's transactional, it's quick wins, and you really get to learn the lingo and the just kind of what a sales process looks like.
Yeah. What were the kind of top 3 skills that you learned back then when you worked for Echo and you start off as a sales rep? Are there any specific skills that you kind of mastered during that time working for Echo that comes to your mind right now?
Yeah, so I don't think I knew I was mastering this skill, but the big takeaway for me was no one cares what you have to offer unless it affects them and it either helps them solve a problem they're trying to solve or reach a goal that they're trying to solve. So, I went from cold calling prospects and saying like, hey, Echo Logistics, we're so great. We have trucks and the technology, to saying like, hey, do you have any pallets sitting around that need to be moved today? Like, are you missing deadlines? Are you losing money? Are you losing revenue because you can't solve this problem? And once I started to take that approach, the sales started coming in a lot quicker and people were responding a lot better. And so that's evolved over time into the sales strategy that I teach my team now, which is that like you have to really dig up those pain points, understand their goals, understand a company's goals, not just their fulfillment goals, and then go from there.
That's perfect. Typically, when you're dealing with more like a transactional sales, which channels would you use? Is it like more calling? You need to get on the phone. Is it more emailing? Because again, when I personally deal with mostly SMBs, and I also have experience working with enterprise, and it's more like account-based selling. It's a long process, right? A lot of different individuals. So I never worked for someone that dealt with more like transactional sales. So is it like a boiler room there, or how does it look? Or I mean, I would say like, what are the most effective channels? Probably the phone, right?
Yeah, probably the phone. There's always the argument forever. There will be the argument of quality versus quantity, right? So you'll have a successful rep that makes 150 calls a day, doesn't care who they're calling, and just takes whatever sticks. And then you'll have the rep that's making, 30 outreaches a day, but they're very intentional, a little bit more of an account-based selling model. And both have been successful. I think in general, for more transactional sale, you just have to get as many reach outs out there as possible.
So the KPI, or sort of like the targets for a sales rep in that type of sales, should be like number of calls that you need to hit per day, as well as the number of deals you need to close per month, because the average sales cycle for those type of deals is usually between 1 to 4 weeks or something. So we can find a customer, engage, qualify, and close a deal within a 1 month cycle, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
When did you start working off the enterprise accounts? When you moved to Trunk Club, or during your career at ShipBob?
Well, Trunk Club is a very interesting sale because it's B2C sale, right?
Okay.
So Trunk Club, we were selling directly to the end customer, but we did treat it as a lot more of an enterprise sale. So there was still a lot of KPIs, a lot of tracking. Essentially, you just want to call someone who potentially signs up for the service. So it's a little bit of a warmer call, and offer them, to either take a trunk or come in and shop with you in person. So you still have to track how many, inputs equals outputs, and, how much activity you're going through every day. And you have to continue to find those pain points for that person. Do you have an event coming up? Do you have a wedding? Is it your anniversary? Why did you sign up for a service where you're essentially paying a premium to go shopping?
Right. Okay, got it. So that was your time during the Trunk Club. And then after that, you went off to working as a director of sales for Illume. And that was this very similar sales process, right? Because you were basically very similar value proposition, a bit different, but the same market, the same niche, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then only when you went off working for ShipBob, then when the whole enterprise long deal stretch sales cycle started, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So ShipBob, we sell directly to e-commerce store owners and operators, and we want to take over their fulfillment. So they would have to send us all of their inventory, warehouse it with us, and trust us to be able to get it to their end customer on time. And it is, one of the most kind of fragile parts of any e-commerce store's operation. So you really have to be able to trust your fulfillment company. And so it's a big, big change. So that immediately turned into an enterprise sale. ShipBob we're really known for our technology, for having an extremely user-friendly dashboard. We provide a ton of analytics for our customers, and not everyone is looking for that. Some folks are just looking to get a package from point A to point B. So it has become a lot closer to a SaaS sale and a more enterprise sale.
Have you had any shift with your sales approach, kind of transitioning from Illume to ShipBob, and the way you approach the sales? And what was that shift, if anything comes to your mind right now, because it was like 2 years ago or something, right? So
yeah, I mean, the shift from going to a transactional to an enterprise sale is a pretty big one. Like, you have to play the long game. You have to make sure you have all the stakeholders involved, all the decision makers, right? If you're not talking to the decision maker, you have to find a way to get to them. And particularly in this industry, what most folks do is like a VP of operations sends someone out to go gather pricing from all the different fulfillment companies. So we're not the cheapest solution. So how do we stand apart, right? So we have to truly make sure that we're comfortable playing the long game and not just handing over a pricing sheet and saying like, here you go, let us know if you're interested. So we've definitely, my team has tweaked their approach quite a bit, because when I started at ShipBob, it was a little bit more of a transactional approach as well.
Got it. And how many salespeople do you guys have right now at ShipBob?
So we've got 16 account executives and I want to say about 30 BDRs.
So BDRs are going out there, they are kind of hustling, generating leads, and then engaging with them, and then setting up calls for account executives. And then the account executives are closing. Are BDRs also involved in the closing? Do they do some of the closing, or they just hand off the leads when the appointments are booked?
Yep, they hand off the leads.
Okay. And then account executives, there was 16 of them, they work on schedule. Okay. I don't want to know the exact numbers for ShipBob, but on average, what would be the perfect KPI for the SDR in the industry? The solid silver line there, because I've heard from some folks that it's up to 20 appointments per month, like good sales qualified appointments, or it's less than that, or it's more than that.
So the interesting thing about fulfillment is a fulfillment company is only as good as the customers we bring on that fit into the box of what we do really well. So there are, thousands, if not millions of e-commerce companies out there, but we are not a good solution for all of them. So what our SDRs do, they're a little bit more of an account-based selling model as well. They are really focused on finding the right customers. So their list of qualifiers is long. Our BDRs, they work so hard. Their job is not easy. So on average, maybe between 7 and 10 appointments a month, depending on the time of year and when folks are looking for fulfillment. But it has to be the right qualified leads for us, or it just doesn't make sense for our company.
Right, of course. And then of that, the closing rate might be something like 20-25%, or it's higher.
Our conversion, it depends. This year we've had a great year, knock on wood, everything is going exceptionally well because e-commerce has taken such a huge lift.
Yeah.
But again, our AEs are just as picky because the way they get compensated is on actualized revenue, not on the close. So the close is a small component of compensation, but generally we want to bring in, again, the right merchants for ShipBob. And so we're just very picky. So our conversion rate is a little bit lower than that because we're so focused on the right customers, because bringing in even one merchant who we're not a good fit for can jeopardize our operations for the rest of our good merchants.
Absolutely. That's so true. How does the sort of like a handoff process look? So do you guys do like a round and robin scheduling where all of your BDRs are just have access to the AE's calendars and just book anyone who is available? Or you have like a dedicated team where there is a team of one AE and then several BDRs that are assigned to that specific AE? Which one is that for you guys?
So it is round robin, but we have different tiers of account executives based on the size of the companies. So it's a round robin, but by volume of merchants.
Got it. And then the BDRs, when they start off working with you guys, so they start with, let's say, small volume shops or small businesses, and then they progress over their career to more like enterprise sales where they deal with more like big players. Is that the way it works, or you don't have that internal gradation or sort of like promotional ladder inside the team?
Yeah, BDRs can go after anyone they want. Some will come in and go whale hunting right away, but then they come to find that it's very, very hard to land those whale meetings. And so they'll scale back a little bit. Others will come in and just kind of try to work their way up. But that team, they hustle. They get very creative.
Have you tried outsourcing your top of the funnel?
It's so impossible. We have a very strong marketing team, so we do quite a bit of inbound business as well. But our sale is so nuanced that I think just to ramp even like an outsourced professional SDR company would take months and months. So I think we've explored the option, we've discussed the option, but it doesn't make sense for us.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know a lot of businesses that the outsourcing model just simply doesn't work because the way your value proposition is based out of, right? And Are there any sort of like technologies that help you guys to be very effective? Some things that you've learned and you say, you know what, this tool or this source is amazing. Can you share anything that you guys use that is specific to your sales organization?
Yeah. So outreach is huge for us. We love outreach. Again, a little bit more on the BDR side, but my team, account executives as well. We've started using Charm to source leads, and that's been really, really helpful for us. You know, we have a pretty robust tech stack, but again, we have, so many different categories across the company. The account executive team is pretty, we use Proposify to send our proposals, but other than that, we're pretty gritty and raw. We still go directly to the source.
Awesome. So, Lisa, I wanted to touch base a bit on your career because you have sort of like a model career. You started off as a business development representative, then you went into account executive, and then sales executive, and then director of sales, and then you were director of client acquisition. Which is a great career, and it took you like 7 to 10 years, right? Kind of transitioning between those roles. So if you go back to those sort of like parts of your life when you transition from one role to another, have you planned on kind of doing your career in sales or building out your career in sales in that way? And if you did, then were there any tools or sources or anything that help you to grow your career, right? Or progress in that, if the question makes sense?
Yeah, the question makes sense. And I wish I had that kind of foresight in my early 20s. I did not. So I landed in sales. I went to school for communications. I actually wanted to do public relations. And I graduated in 2009 when it was a very tough market to get a job. So I had a hard time getting a job. And so I landed at Echo just based on them being one of the big Chicago startups that was hiring at the time. And again, just thought I would get my foot in the door somewhere and maybe transition to a marketing department or something that was more interesting to me just because sales had a bad reputation. And so once I got into it, I was like, this isn't that bad. I can totally do this. But in terms of I didn't really even know what a true sales career progression looked like until, maybe 5 years ago. So I just bounced around to companies that were interesting to me. And my parents were horrified that I was bouncing around so much, but I actually think that really helped elevate my experience because every company I went to, I learned something new. I was there, between 2 and 5, 6 years. And so I feel a lot more well-rounded as a salesperson. So when I was making the switch over to ShipBob, one of the hesitations they had with bringing me on board was, well, you're coming out of fashion and a little bit more of a retail role. And I'm like, to be honest with you, I kind of feel like I can sell anything right now just because I've sold to truckers. I've sold to, C-level executives. So it was not planned and nothing, unfortunately, guided me along the way. And there's amazing tools now that just didn't exist when I was, in my sales career, like Victory Lab, right? Like you can graduate college and go into like a sales training program now, which didn't exist when I was graduating.
Have you had any mentor in your life that helped you to be better at the sales process, or have you been following any folks that were kind of putting their word out there and then you kind of learn from them? Anything?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah. So my director of sales at Trunk Club, Nicole, she and I started working together shortly after I started, and we didn't start off vibing super well at first because she had really, really high expectations for me, and there was times that I thought I was being treated unfairly. She was setting the bar way too high for me, differently than other people. She's one of those people that has an innate ability to see something in you before you see it in yourself. And I think that's kind of what happened with us. And so she pushed me harder than anyone. She was harder on me. She was the one that recognized, my potential to potentially go into management and push me on that track. She's one of the most incredible salespeople I've ever met because you never know you're being sold when you're in a sales process with Nicole. You're just having a conversation, having a lovely time. Next thing you know, you're signing on the dotted line. And so I think, obviously we became not only great colleagues, but great friends over time. And she's someone whose career I still follow very closely and we still talk, weekly. So she's been incredibly helpful to me.
So now you are in management. So are you using any instruments or tools that you learned from Nicole back then?
Yeah,
Can you name top 3 or top 2 that you're currently...
Man. Well, the compliment sandwich is one of my favorite go-tos, right? So if you want to give someone some difficult feedback, you start with something they're doing great, put in the area of improvement, but finish with something that they're doing great, right? So Nicole, again, you walk out of a meeting and you have all these notes of things you need to work on, but you still feel great. Like you can skip away. She's someone who was always able to deliver a tough message in a constructive way. And so that's something I always strive to do because, you still want the buy-in from your team. And it's almost that balance of like tough parenting, but also continuing to be friendly with someone. So that's the biggest thing that I learned from Nicole that's helped me along the way.
Perfect. Listen, this is great. One more thing that, again, wanted to personally learn from you, because I'm in charge of our sales team, even though I'm one of the founders of the agency. But again, this is sort of my personal passion. So I'm hiring, coaching, training salespeople right now. And what I've seen is that, usually it doesn't matter how robust your sales training is and how much information you put in it. Still, there are some things like patterns that salespeople, especially junior ones, are kind of skipping ahead, or then you need to address them because you see that there's a patterns of their mistakes, right? So for you personally, have you seen any very visible patterns of the mistakes that salespeople that you are dealing with are making? And can you name some of those huge patterns that sales managers should look at and should sort of like pay attention on when they are dealing with, not necessarily with juniors, just generally when you are running a sales force?
Yeah, absolutely. One tech tool that I forgot to mention that I really love, and this does answer your question, is Chorus for listening to calls and evaluating calls. And so one thing I've learned, especially with junior salespeople, is that when a prospect is pushing for price, they tend to just give in and give the price, right? And the second you just give in and give the price, you've lost all of your leverage, not because the price is bad, but because you are now just selling on price and you no longer have an opportunity to show your value proposition. You no longer get to understand what their pain points are, what your product or tool or service will solve for them. So, I'm always coaching my team. I listen to their calls in Chorus. If they just let the merchant or the prospect dictate, when they get to see price, then we've already pretty much lost them. So that's something I see really often. Another thing is, of course, it sounds cliche, but overcoming objections and not being shaken by an objection. So I think a less tenured salesperson, when someone pushes back really hard, they kind of lose a little bit of their confidence. And I've heard that a lot. And if you don't know the answer to something, it's okay to say, you know what, that's a great question. I don't know the answer. Let me jot that down and get you some more information. But, they tend to just start mumbling and stumbling over their words. So call listening has been such a huge tool for me. And like, frankly, a call can go upwards of an hour to 90 minutes. I don't have enough time in my day to listen to 4 or 5 of those a day, but a tool like Chorus or Gong is another one I know that's really popular. You can kind of fast forward to where they're talking about price, or you can listen to it a little bit faster. And that kind of real-time feedback has been the most effective.
And then you do like a one-to-one meeting with the sales rep, or like just sort of like sending like a recap of the things that you discovered listening to the call and then something that they need to work on, correct?
I prefer to do it one-on-one because I prefer to first let them listen to the snippet and tell me if they feel like they would do anything differently, right? Because I know what I think and I want to know if they can hear their own mistake, if we're aligned off the bat. Otherwise, I'm going to say, hey, you jumped to price too quickly, and they're just going to agree with me. I want them to come to that conclusion on their own.
Do you personally engage your sales reps in any extra or additional curriculum, like any extra tasks, like creating decks or one-pagers or creating different scripts that are not directly related to their like day-to-day, so it wouldn't help them on the short term to hit their quota? I'm asking this question because I know that if I want to grow a very strong sales leader in general in the future, right, I need to engage that person with the different sub-tasks that person can to do and then evolve, right? But very often when I think that, hey, they don't have time to do that because they are always on the calls, they're always on follow-ups, they need to have to hit quota. So what's your take on that? I mean, am I making fool of myself not doing this, or sort of like, or I need to do that? again, you probably have more experience in that area than me. So can you shed some light on which way should I approach this challenge?
It really depends on the person. So there's some people who are so overwhelmed with the amount of work they have and they're drowning, they don't want to do anything else. And those are the people that you have identified are just going to be an individual contributor for life, right? Like they just want to sell, they want to make the money, they're fine with taking the risk. And then there are some people who you start to see that the more responsibility you put on their plate, the better they perform in all aspects of their job, including sales. And so those people on our team are our team leads, who we've promoted to team lead, who are people we've say like, I could see you being the next manager on my team, but I just don't have an opening right now and I don't know when I will again. And they're always yearning for more. Like you can tell who those people are because they're asking in-depth questions. They want to understand things outside of just the scope of their role. And so we create team lead projects for these folks. We give them a 10% break on quota. So, their quota is 10% lower than their peers so that they could spend about 10% of their time on these projects. And they love it. Like they are the people that love to collaborate cross-functionally. They are the folks that are looking to solve the problems proactively for the company. So especially if you run a little bit more lean, like we do, there's a lot of people wearing a lot of different hats. It really empowers those people. It makes them feel more bought into the company. And so for the right people, I strongly encourage adding a little bit more to their plate.
Definitely, that's probably the right way to go, right? If you want to build a strong sales team. Cool. So now you are a director of client acquisition. So your job is to acquire customers, right? Client, or make sure that you have all processes in place for the company to acquire clients. And when it comes to client acquisition, what are the main channels that you put your money on right now that you feel? Because again, there's so many channels right now, so many opportunities to acquire customers. Some of them are more expensive, less expensive. So where we are right now, because to give you one of the examples here, I mean, over the last 6 months when everyone is working from home, the traffic for LinkedIn increased by like 75%. People start spending more time on LinkedIn, right? Did it result in acquiring more customers on LinkedIn or making their acquisition costs getting lower? Again, going back to my initial questions, where you put your money on with regards to marketing spend and marketing channels?
Yeah, so our marketing team is very focused on like SEO and like Google AdWords. But you have to remember that the ShipBob sale is very specific in the sense that anyone we're talking to needs a fulfillment solution, right? So it's not a value added service to them. It's not like a nice to have. It's a true need to have. So we're not competing against like right now you don't have this and we will give it to you. We're competing against our competitors. So whether that's someone who's currently doing their fulfillment in-house or they're with another 3PL. So, like I know our marketing team is very focused on having ShipBob come up when you type in best e-commerce fulfillment, best fulfillment solution, things like that. We've started doing webinars. We've started doing really fun webinars with existing merchants of ours who can speak to their ShipBob experience. And again, like it's a fairly convoluted market. So to really set yourself apart, you have to almost have like this identity, like this online identity and personality. And ShipBob prides themselves on being kind of the gold standard that if you're truly ready to outsource your fulfillment and take your company to the next level, you'll want to talk to us.
All right. Do you do any advertising, retargeting, remarketing, all of that?
Yeah. Our marketing team can speak more closely to it. I just take the lead, close them. But yeah, we definitely do quite a bit of that.
And your BDRs, since they do active lead generation and they use outreach, and I know the outreach they integrate with email, they have some LinkedIn integration, and then you can do calling as well. So when you look or think about your average BDR and the time they're spending doing the outreach, where do they spend most of their time? Is it email? Is it LinkedIn? Or it's calling?
It's probably email using, some of the accounts we've identified. They actually do quite a bit of Instagram prospecting because, Instagram targets, so e-commerce stores on Instagram target folks. So like we work with a lot of companies that sell like healthcare, vitamins, supplements, workout equipment. And so a lot of that comes from Instagram, and they'll just respond to one of the ads and say like, how are you guys doing your fulfillment? And that's been a really interesting channel for us.
Just to make sure I understand you. So I go to my Instagram application from my phone. I check the e-commerce store. I click on their ad or something, right? And I just type them, hey guys, great ad. How you doing your fulfillment? And they respond to you on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then you just start talking, and then you just then transition to email. Hey, give me your email address to send you more information.
Exactly.
So Instagram is good. So what I understand from this, if your customer or prospect does its business off the Instagram, right? Because that's their platform, because they make money of that, right? They're active. They're going to be checking their Instagram page on a daily basis every time there is a person there, right? So you can generate. That's great. I heard from an agency that we work with. They do SEO. I heard from them they also do quite heavily Instagram prospecting, and it worked just great for them. But we personally never did that because that's a very manual process, right? It's a very manual process, and usually salespeople don't like spending their time just doing that. But you're saying that it yield you great results, right?
Yeah, like our addressable market is huge, and so a lot of our BDRs will spend time just living in Salesforce and just going through maybe old prospects that we can re-engage. But new e-commerce companies pop up every day that are not in our Salesforce, and Instagram is one of the easiest way for a new company to kind of start their advertising and reach their target audience. So that they're really focused on it. And a lot of our biggest customers to date started pre-launch. So started before they even launched their product, started with us and have grown so quickly that they're our biggest customers now. So it is actually a very effective channel.
Yeah, and when you think about e-commerce, you don't even need to have a website. Basically, you have an Instagram, right? And you just sell off the Instagram. That's it.
Yeah.
So definitely, that's thinking about your ideal customer profile and about Instagram. Obviously, that's the best way to go. And do you do any like LinkedIn outreach, anything off the LinkedIn? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually recommend to my reps. So if they have a prospect that's in the sales cycle with us that we can't re-engage for whatever reason, they're not responding to emails, not responding to calls, I always say send them a LinkedIn message. One of the things it does is puts a name to a face. So it's a little bit more personalized in that they see your picture and they're like, ooh, I didn't expect to see you here. I see you in my inbox. And that tends to garner responses.
True. There's so many people on LinkedIn right now that are just sending just random generic messages, and you probably receive hundreds of them on LinkedIn on a daily basis. So are there any best practice that you've seen or any specific LinkedIn message that you recently received that caught your eye that was really great that you engaged with? Because I probably engaged with like 0.1% of all the messages that I received.
Well, I got a LinkedIn message from you guys, and here we are. So obviously, you're doing something right. But I think again, the most effective messages are not the ones I get. I would say 98% of the messages I get are somebody telling me what they're offering, right? So their service. The ones I do engage with are folks that are, making it about me, right? And it sounds like I have an ego, but I don't. But it's a lot more personalized to me. So like, I was recently on a list. I don't know if it's the same list you guys found me on, but it was like women in sales. And so I got a lot of women reaching out to me saying like, hey, I'm just starting out my career. It's so nice to see a woman in sales who's been successful. And like, of course, I'm going to answer those because I'm happy to speak with those women. But what I encourage my reps to do is say like, hey, Joe, you told me a few months ago that your current fulfillment company was having a hard time keeping up with orders. And that's why you guys were looking to make a change. Have they gotten better? If they've gotten better, then cool, stay where you are. You don't need to make a switch to ShipBob right now. But again, making it personal, addressing their pain point, addressing their company goal, or like, hey, you told me you guys were going to grow 500% this year. Do you need to outsource your fulfillment now with that kind of growth?
And you start off with a question, right? You never talk, hey, I am with this company, we do this, but you start off with addressing the point or a question, right?
Yeah, just addressing anything that's specific to that person.
You know what? I've had this conversation with one of the sales leaders not so long ago, and we talk about voicemails, like that people usually leave very generic voicemails that you never call back, right? And one of that guy's recommendations was that you do the voicemail like you do like a very personalized email message or something. So you start off with a question or asking something, and then you you tell why you asked this question, and then usually it's kind of catch your eye on like, oh, okay, this is nice. Like, I want to hear more, which is weird. So if you treat all the channels like, you don't engage with bad ads, right, on Facebook or Instagram because but you could engage with the ones that are personal to you, right, and that matter to you. To wrap this up, Marina, and again, I appreciate your time and your insights. It's been very great. Any books or any podcasts or channels on YouTube that you recommend for folks to read and to be better at sales?
Yeah, so my current obsession is Snap Selling by Jill Conrath. So Snap Selling is a little bit, with all the sales methodologies out there, Spin and Sandler and all of that stuff, a little bit dated, I think. Snap Selling was the one that speaks more to like today's type of sale. Mm-hmm. And so what Jill talks about is just making sure, again, you're identifying, like she's basically saying prospects are way too busy and are way too flooded with outreach to engage with you if you are not catering your approach exactly to them. So kind of along the lines of what I've been saying. And so, she talks about leaving a voicemail instead of saying like, hi, I'm Marina from ShipBob. We offer great e-commerce fulfillment. She says, hi, I was wondering if you guys are staying on target with your fulfillment goals for this quarter, right? And it's like, oh, I don't know, am I? So she's got, there's YouTube channels, there's a book, there's a website. So Snap Selling is the one I would most recommend right now.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Belkin's Growth Podcast and found it useful. Be sure to subscribe and catch upcoming episodes on iTunes and Stitcher.